As the first wave of alien ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, humanity's hope rested on a single fragile thing: the Aegis. Earth had only one ship capable of facing the invaders head-on, and it was their last line of defense. The Aegis was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed to withstand the impossible. But the aliens had underestimated Earth's resolve. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. The skies above Earth were filled with alien warships, each one a gleaming testament to a race more advanced than anything Earth had ever known. Massive hulking ships made of organic materials, covered in plasma cannons and shields, hovered over major cities, preparing to unleash destruction. The invaders came in waves, their plasma weapons humming with deadly intent. The first barrage struck. Plasma cannons fired from the massive alien fleet, targeting Earth's major cities: New York, London, Beijing. The energy blasts were terrifying, streaking across the sky like streaks of fiery lightning. Buildings crumbled, and the cities were reduced to rubble in seconds. But amidst the chaos and destruction, there was a beacon of hope, a warship unlike any the invaders had seen. The Aegis stood tall, its massive form cutting through the smoky skies. Unlike the smooth, organic shapes of the alien ships, the Aegis was built with pure human craftsmanship. Its jagged metal exterior was reinforced with an experimental energy shield that could absorb incoming fire. It wasn't the most beautiful ship, but it didn't need to be. What it lacked in elegance, it made up for with raw, unrelenting power. As the Aegis powered up its engines, the ship's energy shield hummed to life, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. The crew of Earth's finest, stationed aboard the vessel, prepared for what was about to unfold. They had only one shot at this. If the Aegis failed, Earth would fall. But they wouldn't go down without a fight. The aliens fired again. The Aegis's energy shield absorbed the plasma blast with a burst of light. The force of the impact rippled across the ship, but it held. The crew cheered, a surge of hope flooding through them. They had known the Aegis was capable of absorbing incoming fire, but seeing it work in real time was different. An overwhelming sense of power rushed through the crew as they realized their ship could stand up to the enemy's most devastating weapon. But the battle was far from over. The invaders, surprised but not deterred, quickly reloaded and launched another series of plasma shots. The alien fleet moved in, prepared to unleash their full firepower on the ship that had dared to challenge them. But the Aegis wasn't just a passive defender, it was a weapon in itself. "Target locked," the weapons officer said, his voice calm despite the chaos outside. The Aegis's weapons systems powered up. A high-pitched whine filled the cabin as it drew on the energy it had absorbed. The ship fired, sending a burst of concentrated energy back at the nearest alien ship. The blast hit its target with precision, cutting through the enemy's shields and tearing the warship in half. The invaders watched in shock as their own power was turned against them. The moment was surreal. Humans, against all odds, had just fired back at their attackers with their own energy. From the command deck, Captain Elizabeth Liz Carter watched the alien ship fall apart in flames. She knew this was just the beginning, but it felt like a turning point. Earth wasn't just standing its ground, it was fighting back. And it wasn't just any fight. It was humanity showing the galaxy that they had something that the aliens couldn't predict: a will to survive and a mind capable of turning the tables. The battle was far from over, and the aliens knew it. But for the first time since the invasion began, they realized that the conquest of Earth might not be as simple as they had hoped. The human warship, the Aegis, had proven something to them that they could never have expected. Earth was not a helpless, primitive species waiting for annihilation. Earth was fighting back, and it would not go down without a fight. The aliens, stunned by the loss of their warship and the unexpected resilience of the Aegis, retreated momentarily, regrouping and recalibrating their strategies. Captain Liz Carter stood at the helm of the Aegis, her eyes locked onto the flickering screens in front of her. showing the status of both Earth's fleet and the alien invaders. It had only been a few hours since the battle began, but it felt like a lifetime. Earth had just experienced its first taste of true galactic warfare, and it was clear now. Humanity was in this fight for the long haul. The Aegis wasn't just any warship, it was the culmination of years of research, innovation, and secrecy. Built under the tightest security by the brightest minds Earth had to offer, it was equipped with technology that no alien species could have anticipated. Its energy shield, which had absorbed and neutralized the initial plasma barrage, was only the beginning. The ship was capable of much more, and the time had come to reveal the full extent of its capabilities. Back on Earth, the military's high command watched anxiously from underground bunkers, monitoring the progress of the battle. General Marcus Vance, one of the architects behind the Aegis project, had spent years ensuring that humanity would not be defenseless in the face of a galactic threat. It was a gamble, building a ship like the Aegis, but as he watched the alien ships hesitate, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Humanity had a chance. In the heart of the Aegis, the command center buzzed with activity as the ship's crew prepared for the next phase of the battle. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Michael Hayes, was the first to realize what they had at their disposal. As the ship absorbed more plasma energy, it wasn't just neutralizing the threat, it was converting the energy into usable power for their own offensive capabilities. It wasn't just defense anymore. The Aegis had become a weapon capable of turning the tide. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes said, his voice steady, "we've got full power in the neutralizer. We're good to go." Liz turned toward him, her face grim but resolute. The neutralizer was humanity's trump card, a weapon built to counteract the invaders' plasma-based technology. The more energy the Aegis absorbed, the more powerful the neutralizer became. It was humanity's answer to the galaxy's most dominant weapons, and the aliens had no idea it existed. "Target the closest enemy vessel," Liz commanded. "Prepare to fire." As the Aegis's systems hummed to life, the crew held their breath. On the view screen, an alien warship, heavily damaged but still operational, hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere. The ship had already fired several more devastating plasma blasts, but the Aegis had absorbed every one of them, its shield glowing brighter with each hit. Now, the time had come to strike back. The Aegis fired. The neutralizer unleashed a powerful pulse of concentrated energy, a beam so precise that it cut through the alien warship's shields as if they weren't there at all. The alien vessel's defense systems crumbled, and the beam punched straight into its heart, tearing through the hull with explosive force. The ship disintegrated in an instant, vaporized by the very plasma energy it had fired at Earth just moments before. The crew let out a collective cheer. They had just neutralized an enemy ship with a single shot, something the aliens had never considered possible. The Aegis's energy shield wasn't just for defense. It had turned the invaders' greatest weapon into humanity's most formidable offense. The aliens had no idea how to respond. Their ships fired blindly into space, hoping to land a hit, but each blast was absorbed by the Aegis's growing shield. The human ship was an unstoppable force, and for the first time since the invasion began, the tide was beginning to turn. Captain Carter watched the view screen, her mind racing. The battle was still far from over, but this moment, this victory, was proof of something more important than just technology. It was proof that humanity, despite its perceived weakness, had the ingenuity, the resilience, and the will to survive. The aliens had underestimated them, and now they would see the true power of humanity. Earth would fight. Earth would win. Liz turned to her crew, her voice resolute. "Prepare for the next wave. We're not done yet." The battle had only just begun, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they weren't going to let it be their last. The sudden destruction of another alien warship sent a ripple of fear through the invader ranks. The Zephyrians, Mornax, and Staltar Dominion, the three most powerful factions in the galaxy, had never encountered a species like humanity. They had come expecting an easy conquest, a simple extermination of a primitive world. But what they faced now was an entirely different beast, a species that refused to back down, that fought back with an unexpected ingenuity. The very weapon they had relied on to dominate civilizations was now being turned against them. The alien fleets hesitated, exchanging frantic communications through their secure channels. They had to reevaluate. The Zephyrians, once the galaxy's most advanced race, had spent millennia refining their plasma weaponry and shields. They had never dreamed that a relatively young, underdeveloped species like humanity could not only withstand their power, but turn it into a devastating countermeasure. Within the Zephyrian command ship, Grand Admiral Vora slammed her fist against the console. The Aegis had destroyed another warship in a single shot, and their plasma weapons were practically useless against it. She could see the chaos unfolding within her ranks. Officers scrambled to analyze the situation, desperate for any new information that could help them get the upper hand. "This is impossible," she muttered to herself. "How can they do this? Their technology is far behind ours." The Mornax, a brutal, militaristic species, were known for their dominance in space battles, yet even they were rattled. Their ships, designed for offensive strategies and overwhelming firepower, were now sitting ducks, their plasma weapons no match for the Aegis's energy-absorbing shields. "We need a new strategy," said a Mornax commander, his voice shaky for the first time since the invasion had begun. "We've never faced anything like this." Meanwhile, on Earth, the Aegis remained a beacon of humanity's defiance. The crew felt the weight of the moment. They had won battles, yes, but the war was far from over. The alien invaders were regrouping, trying to devise a new tactic, but the question loomed. Could humanity continue to hold its ground? Captain Liz Carter stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the view screen, which showed the scattered remnants of the alien fleet. Earth's fleet had sustained losses, but they had also inflicted significant damage. It was a stalemate, but not one in humanity's favor. If the aliens reorganized and attacked with greater force, the Aegis would not survive for much longer. "We need to go on the offensive," Liz said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "We can't just wait for them to regroup. We need to take the fight to them." Lieutenant Hayes nodded from his station. "The Aegis's systems are fully charged. If we can find the right target, we can take out their flagship. That should throw them into disarray." Liz was silent for a moment, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't afford to waste any time. The Aegis's energy shield was absorbing everything, growing stronger with each shot, but it wouldn't be long before the invaders figured out a way to adapt. They were resourceful, especially the Zephyrians. The battle needed to end soon, or humanity's one advantage would be neutralized. "Helm, plot a course toward the Zephyrian command ship," Liz ordered. "We're going after their flagship." The crew moved quickly, preparing for a high-risk mission. The Aegis powered up, its engines roaring as it moved into position. In the distance, the massive Zephyrian command ship loomed, surrounded by a swarm of smaller warships. If they could destroy the command ship, the alien forces would lose their coordination, and the remaining fleets would be left leaderless. "Captain," Hayes said, his voice tense, "we have incoming, multiple plasma volleys." Liz didn't hesitate. "Full speed ahead, bring us closer." The Aegis surged forward, its energy shield absorbing the incoming blasts. With every hit, the shield grew stronger, but the stress on the ship was beginning to show. Liz gritted her teeth, unwilling to let anything stop them now. "We're almost in range," Hayes reported. Liz's eyes narrowed as she focused on the Zephyrian flagship. The alien ships continued to fire, but their attacks were becoming more erratic. The Aegis was closing in, and the crew's resolve was hardening. They couldn't let up now. "Prepare the neutralizer," Liz ordered. "On my mark." The ship shuddered as another wave of plasma fire struck, but this time the Aegis was ready. Its energy shield absorbed the energy, storing it until the moment was right. The alien fleet was about to fire another massive barrage, but Liz had one chance to strike first. "Mark," she said, her voice a calm command that belied the chaos around them. The Aegis unleashed the full force of the neutralizer. A beam of energy so intense it seemed to tear through the fabric of space itself shot forward, slamming directly into the Zephyrian flagship. The alien ship's shields buckled under the force of the blast, and its hull was torn apart. The massive vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves through the remaining fleet. The tide of the battle shifted in an instant. The Zephyrians, stunned and leaderless, faltered. The remaining invader ships hesitated, their movements now disorganized, their confidence shattered. Humanity had just taken the first real step in turning the tide of the war. The galaxy's most powerful empires had learned a painful lesson. Humanity would not go down without a fight. The Aegis had struck again, and the alien forces would have to rethink everything they thought they knew about Earth. The destruction of the Zephyrian flagship sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, the once confident invaders hesitated, their massive warships now unsure of their next move. The Aegis had dealt a crippling blow to their command structure, and with it, the carefully coordinated assault that had been their greatest strength. The galaxy's most feared military force was reeling, struggling to recover from a setback they never expected. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Liz Carter stood tall, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, it seemed like humanity might just have a fighting chance. The remaining alien ships, disorganized and chaotic, were no longer an unstoppable force. Earth had disrupted the balance, and now the invaders were forced to adapt. "We can't let up now," Liz said firmly, turning to her crew. "They'll try to regroup. We need to push forward and break their morale. We have to hit them hard while they're still disoriented." The crew responded quickly, their training kicking in. They knew the stakes had never been higher. Humanity's fate rested on their ability to stay focused and act decisively. Lieutenant Hayes adjusted his controls, glancing at the data streaming across his terminal. "Captain, the remaining fleets are attempting to reorganize. They've called in reinforcements from the outer sectors. It looks like they're preparing for a full counterattack." The alien fleets had quickly realized that to lose the Aegis would mean the collapse of their entire invasion effort. They couldn't afford another defeat. The remaining ships were now moving into formation, preparing for one final assault. It was clear they were desperate to stop humanity's momentum before the tide completely turned in Earth's favor. "We need to end this quickly," Liz said, her voice steady but determined. "Prepare for the next strike. We're going to hit them hard, and we're going to hit them fast." The Aegis powered up, its engines roaring to life as it surged forward toward the heart of the remaining alien fleet. As it drew closer, the crew could see the massive concentration of enemy ships. The odds were staggering. Dozens of alien warships, their weapons primed and ready, waiting to unleash everything they had on Earth's last hope. But humanity had something the invaders did not: the element of surprise and a weapon they hadn't yet fully understood. "We're in range," Hayes announced. "Initiating neutralizer sequence. All systems are primed." Liz's grip tightened on the console. The Aegis had absorbed enough energy now that its shield was practically glowing, pulsing with power. The alien ships opened fire, unleashing everything they had. Plasma blasts streaked across the sky, each one aimed at the Aegis. But once again, the ship's energy shield absorbed the incoming fire. It hummed with intensity, feeding off the alien weapons, growing stronger with each strike. "Captain, the neutralizer is ready," Hayes said, his voice tight with anticipation. Liz nodded. "Fire. Now." The Aegis released the full force of its charged-up weapon, a beam of pure energy that lanced out toward the heart of the alien formation. The beam hit its target with terrifying accuracy, slicing through the front lines of enemy ships with ease. Alien ships disintegrated in a flash of light as the energy pulse tore through their shields and hulls. The remaining invader ships reeled from the attack, But they didn't give up. The Mornax and Zephyrians were known for their tenacity, and they immediately adjusted their tactics, spreading out to minimize the effectiveness of the Aegis' attacks. They tried to fire back, but their weapons now lacked the same potency as before. The Aegis was too strong. The energy shield absorbed everything, rendering their firepower almost useless. The Aegis didn't give them time to regroup. With its neutralizer ready for another strike, the crew locked onto the next target. The Mornax flagship. The ship was massive, surrounded by a ring of smaller vessels, all intent on defending their leader. "All weapons charge," Lieutenant Hayes reported. "We've got them in our sights." Liz's jaw set. This was their moment. Take the shot. Another pulse of energy shot from the Aegis, tearing through the enemy ranks and heading straight for the Mornax flagship. The beam hit its target with pinpoint precision, and the flagship's defenses were overwhelmed in seconds. The hull of the massive ship buckled under the assault, and with a cataclysmic explosion, it was torn apart. The smaller Mornax ships scattered, their morale shattered by the destruction of their flagship. For a moment, there was silence. The remaining alien ships faltered, their crew scrambling to reorganize. But it was too late. The Aegis had proved its dominance. The battle was shifting in humanity's favor. For the first time, the alien invaders were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. They were a fractured, disorganized force trying to regroup after a humiliating series of defeats. They were learning the hard way that humanity had a weapon they hadn't accounted for: the power of perseverance, innovation, and unity. Liz stood tall, her heart pounding with the knowledge that Earth had reached a tipping point. "We've got them on the ropes," she said, her voice quiet but full of conviction. "But we can't stop now. Let's finish this." The Aegis surged forward once more, ready for whatever came next. Humanity had risen against the galaxy's greatest powers, and they weren't backing down. The ultimate test was still to come, but Earth was no longer a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. The Aegis pressed onward, its engines roaring through space like a giant beast on the hunt. The alien fleet, now a fragmented force with morale at an all-time low, was struggling to maintain any semblance of order. What had once been a well-coordinated, ruthless invasion had devolved into chaos. The Mornax, Zephyrians, and Zaltar Dominion had once fought together in perfect harmony, but the destruction of their flagship fleets had shattered their alliance. The fear of complete defeat was now palpable in the ranks. Admiral Vora, standing at the heart of the Zephyrian command ship, seethed with frustration. Her mind raced as she watched the Aegis rip through the remaining alien vessels. The Aegis had disrupted everything: communication, tactics, and the very foundation of their strategy. The galaxy's most advanced military forces were struggling to adapt to an enemy that had no business challenging their might. Vora clenched her fists as she watched her fleet collapse. "This cannot continue," she muttered, her voice thick with anger. "We will not be beaten by these humans." The Mornax commander, Admiral Korak, stood nearby, his massive frame hunched over as he observed the battle's tide shifting. The once proud Mornax were now scattered, their ships torn apart in the wake of the Aegis' neutralizer strikes. Their own tactics, which relied on overwhelming force and brute strength, seemed useless against the Earth ship. "This isn't a fight," Korak growled. "It's slaughter. We have to unite, or Earth will crush us all." The alliance, fragile as it had been, was beginning to crack. Each faction blamed the other for their downfall, and the once ironclad unity between the invaders was turning into open distrust and infighting. The Mornax blamed the Zephyrians for failing to neutralize the Aegis sooner, while the Zaltar Dominion questioned the effectiveness of the combined fleet strategy. But despite their growing internal tensions, there was one undeniable truth: they couldn't afford to lose. Not now. Not when their entire way of life was at risk. Back aboard the Aegis, Captain Liz Carter observed the shifting dynamics. The alien fleets were disintegrating in front of them, but she knew this wasn't the end. The invaders would rally, adapt, and counterattack. Their alliance might be breaking down, but the fight wasn't over. Liz had seen enough of war to understand that the enemy would fight to the bitter end. The destruction of their fleets might have given Earth that temporary advantage, but it wouldn't win the war. "We need to stay on the offensive," Liz said, her voice calm but firm. "We can't give them a chance to regroup. Let's hit them before they can make their next move." Lieutenant Hayes glanced at his console. The remaining forces are trying to form a new formation, but it's a mess. They're not coordinating like before. The Mornax are already arguing with the Zephyrians about tactics. "Good," Liz said with a tight smile. "Let's keep them disorganized. We hit them hard. No mercy. The Aegis is fully powered, and we've got one shot to finish this. Let's make it count." The Aegis powered forward once more, its energy shield glowing fiercely as it drew in the plasma fire from the enemy fleet. The crew worked in sync, every motion instinctual, as they navigated their way through the wreckage of what had once been a coordinated invasion force. The neutralizer was charged and ready, the power of absorbed enemy fire at its peak. It was time to strike again. "Target the Mornax flagship," Liz ordered. "We need to cripple them before they can pull together any new strategy." Hayes nodded. "Locking on. All weapons are primed." The Aegis fired, the neutralizer beam cutting through space with unimaginable precision. The Mornax flagship, a massive behemoth surrounded by smaller ships, didn't stand a chance. The beam tore through its energy shields like paper, and with a thunderous explosion, the flagship was obliterated. The remaining Mornax vessels scattered, their unity shattered once more. Admiral Korek's furious roar echoed throughout his ship's command room as the flagship fell. He knew that the Mornax were no longer a force to be reckoned with, but even in his fury, a seed of doubt was planted. Could they really win this battle, this war? The aliens had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. "We cannot lose," Korek muttered, more to himself than to his remaining officers. "The humans must fall. They will not destroy us." In the Aegis, the crew was silent for a moment, watching the devastation they had caused. The battle was far from won, but this felt like the final push. Humanity was not going to be defeated. Liz looked out at the vast expanse of space, her heart racing. There was no turning back now. Earth had gone from being a target to becoming the focal point of an intergalactic war. "We've broken them," Liz said, her voice steady. "Now we finish it." The crew was ready. The war was far from over, but they had proven something that would echo across the stars. Humanity was no longer an easy target. It was a force to be reckoned with, and in this fight for survival, Earth would not back down. The alien fleets were disintegrating, their once proud ships now nothing more than broken husks drifting in the vastness of space. The Aegis had become the symbol of humanity's defiance, a beacon of hope in the midst of galactic chaos. But Liz Carter knew the battle wasn't over. The remaining invaders were fractured, yes, but they still had the firepower to turn the tide. And even more concerning, they still had one last card to play. The communications officer, Lieutenant Carla Johnson, turned to Liz, her face etched with concern. "Captain, we've intercepted a distress signal. It's coming from the Zephyrian High Command. They're requesting reinforcements from their homeworld. Fast." Liz's gaze hardened. The Zephyrians, the most technologically advanced of the alien forces, had been hit the hardest in the last few hours. But they were relentless. They had the resources and the will to regroup. And with reinforcements on the way, they could make another push, one that could wipe out Earth's remaining defenses. The Aegis was strong, but it couldn't fight an entire fleet alone forever. "We need to strike first," Liz said, her voice firm. "We can't let them regroup. If they get reinforcements, we'll be back to square one." Lieutenant Hayes, who had been monitoring their weapon systems, spoke up. "Captain, the Aegis is at full capacity. The neutralizer is ready, but we need to make this next strike count. We don't have many more shots before their reinforcements arrive." Liz nodded, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The moment had come. They needed to eliminate the Zephyrians' ability to fight back, once and for all. The only way to do that was to target their command ship, destroy their last line of communication and control. Plot a course to their flagship, Liz ordered. We're going straight for the heart of their command fleet. The crew moved quickly, executing their orders with practiced efficiency. The Aegis surged forward, pushing past the debris of destroyed alien ships as it set its sights on the Zephyrian flagship. Liz's hands gripped the command chair tightly, her mind focused on the task ahead. The ship was still vulnerable despite its incredible firepower, and if they didn't hit the Zephyrians before their reinforcements arrived, the battle would turn in the enemy's favor. We're entering the target zone, Hayes reported, his voice tense. They're powering up their shields and weapons, ready to retaliate. Liz's eyes narrowed. They won't get the chance. Fire the neutralizer. Full power. The Aegis's weapons systems hummed to life, and a massive beam of energy surged forward, cutting through the void. It collided with the Zephyrian flagship's energy shields, which flickered momentarily before collapsing under the intensity of the blast. The beam continued its path, slamming into the heart of the alien ship, where a series of explosions erupted. The flagship's massive hull buckled, and with a deafening shockwave, the ship disintegrated, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. The remaining Zephyrian ships faltered, their communications severed, their command ship destroyed. Without their flagship, they were a disorganized, ineffective force, unable to coordinate or rally effectively. The crew of the Aegis breathed a collective sigh of relief, but Liz knew it wasn't over. The Mornax and Zaltar fleets, still holding out against the destruction of their command ships, would have to be dealt with next. And as the battle continued to unfold in space, reinforcements from the outer rim would soon arrive. The stakes had never been higher, and the margin for error was razor-thin. Report, Liz said, looking to her officers for confirmation. Hayes worked quickly, scanning the data. Their fleet is in disarray, Captain. The Zephyrians are retreating, at least for now. The Mornax are still regrouping, but they're not coordinated. The Xaltar Dominion has pulled back entirely. Liz allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. It's working, but we need to press our advantage. The Aegis's crew was already preparing for the next phase of the battle. Despite the chaos in the alien ranks, the invasion was not finished. Their enemy, though fractured and weakened, still held the strength of numbers. Earth's forces, however, had the key advantage. They had already shown the aliens what humanity was capable of. The tide was turning in Earth's favor, but the final gambit had to be executed perfectly. The Aegis had already proven its worth, but to win this war, humanity would need to break the aliens' will entirely. Liz turned to her crew, determination etched on her face. Prepare for one last strike. We're going to end this once and for all. The Aegis sped into the heart of the alien forces, ready to deliver the final blow. The war was reaching its climax, and humanity, for the first time in galactic history, stood as the unshakable force that would determine the future of the galaxy. The alien forces were regrouping, but they were not the cohesive fighting machine they had once been. The Zephyrians had been crushed, their command ship obliterated. The Mornax were disorganized, scrambling to rebuild their command structure. The Xaltar Dominion had all but retreated, leaving behind a shattered remnant of their former power. Yet despite the visible chaos, humanity's forces knew better than to underestimate their enemies. There was still a final, desperate push to come. Inside the Aegis, the tension was palpable. The crew had proven themselves in battle, but the final confrontation would test them more than any previous encounter. Liz Carter stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the view screen as their ship sped toward the heart of the alien fleet. The battle had shifted in humanity's favor, but the war was far from won. There was one last force standing in their way, the combined might of the Mornax and any remaining Zaltar ships that had not yet fled. "We're almost in position," Lieutenant Hayes said, his fingers flying across the control console. The remaining fleets are consolidating. It looks like they've chosen their last line of defense, a massive, heavily fortified battalion in the outer system. Liz nodded, her resolve hardening. This was it. The final stand. There was no turning back now. We'll hit them hard. One final strike, Liz ordered. If we don't break them here, their reinforcements will make this fight even worse. Let's finish this. The Aegis's engines hummed louder, surging forward as it approached the alien forces. The vast fleet before them, once a symbol of overwhelming power, now looked like a shadow of its former self. The Zephyrians, Mornax, and Zaltar Dominion had never imagined that a small, young species like humanity could stand against them. Now the alien alliance was struggling to hold together, each ship weaker and more fragmented than the last. The remaining enemy fleet was positioned in a defensive formation around a massive central command ship, the heart of their last coordinated effort. Liz's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the enemy ships prepare for one last desperate defense. The time for diplomacy was over. Humanity had fought for its survival, and now it was time to secure victory. Captain, Carla Johnson called from the communications station. We've intercepted a final transmission from the Mornax leadership. They're requesting immediate reinforcements from the Zaltar. It seems they're throwing everything they have left into this one battle. Liz's eyes narrowed. The Mornax knew their time was running out, and that Zaltar Dominion had to either commit or completely withdraw. This final battle would decide everything. The aliens had no more room for failure. Let them come, Liz said. We'll make sure this is their last stand. The Aegis powered forward, its engines shaking under the stress of full throttle acceleration. The ship's energy shield was absorbing plasma blasts as it advanced toward the heart of the enemy's formation. Each wave of fire from the alien fleet only made the Aegis stronger, charging up the neutralizer for the final strike. Hayes looked up from his console, his face tight with focus. We're in range of the Mornax flagship and the enemy command vessel. The neutralizer is ready for maximum output. Liz's voice was steady despite the mounting pressure. Fire. Now. The Aegis unleashed its final blast. The neutralizer, charged with the energy absorbed from countless alien attacks, fired in a blinding beam of raw power. The beam tore through space, cutting through the Mornax flagship and the Zaltar command ship simultaneously. The ships disintegrated in a flash of light, their structures collapsing into debris as the massive blast tore through them. The remaining alien ships were caught in the aftermath of the explosion, their shields failing under the force of the blast. The Aegis surged forward, its weapon systems primed for another attack, but the aliens had no time to react. Without leadership, without a central command, their defenses crumbled. We've done it, Hayes said, awe in his voice as the last of the alien fleet fell apart. Their command ships are gone. The rest of the fleet is scattering. Liz exhaled, feeling the weight of the battle lift from her shoulders. Hold steady. They'll retreat, but we need to make sure they don't get away. Plot a course for the remaining stragglers. We'll finish this now. The Aegis tore through the wreckage of the defeated fleet, its weapons finishing off any remaining alien ships that dared to stay in the fight. The once unified alien alliance was in shambles, and the final pockets of resistance were quickly neutralized. In the command center of the Aegis, the crew couldn't contain their relief. The long hours of battle, the uncertainty, and the endless waves of alien forces had led to this moment, the end of the invasion. The ships in the sky, once a terrifying omen of humanity's doom, were now nothing more than debris, floating in the aftermath of a decisive victory. Liz stood, her hands gripping the back of her chair. She watched the destruction unfold on the view screen, the stars twinkling in the distance as the final remnants of the alien invasion melted away. There was no cheering, no celebration. The cost of this war had been great, and the memories of those who had fallen would live on. But for now, humanity had won. We did it, Carla whispered, barely able to believe it. Liz nodded, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. Yes, we did. The war was over. The galaxy had just learned that humanity would not be so easily conquered. And in the heart of it all, the Aegis had stood strong. The Aegis drifted silently through the remains of the alien fleet, the final echoes of battle fading into the vacuum of space. The stars outside twinkled peacefully, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded in the past few days. Earth's victory was complete, but the price had been steep, and the silence felt almost surreal after the storm. Inside the Aegis, the crew moved through the corridors with a quiet sense of exhaustion, each person knowing they had just secured the survival of their species. There were no cheers, no fanfare. The weight of the moment was too heavy, too sacred. They had won, but they had lost much too. Captain Liz Carter stood on the bridge, her eyes focused on the view screen, where the debris of the alien invasion fleet drifted into nothingness. The shattered remnants of the enemy ships were a reminder of the battle they had fought, and the lives that had been lost. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would be felt for years to come. "Captain," Hayes called out, breaking the silence. "The remaining alien ships have been completely neutralized. We've tracked the retreating ships, and there's no sign of any further threat. The Earth fleet has reported back, and they're in full retreat. We've secured victory." Liz took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment of relief. "We did what we had to do. But the war, it's not really over. Not yet." Hayes frowned. "What do you mean, Captain?" "The aliens have been driven back." "Yes," Liz replied, turning toward him, her expression somber. "But Earth will need to rebuild. The alliance we formed with other nations to defend Earth, it's fragile. There are still people who want to take advantage of the chaos. The fight isn't just with the invaders. It's also within." There was a murmur of agreement from the bridge crew. They all understood. The war against the aliens had united the world under a common cause, but now that the external threat was gone, humanity would face its own struggles. There were already whispers of power struggles, political turmoil, and the difficult process of managing the aftermath of a war of this magnitude. Security forces have reported no immediate threats on Earth, Lieutenant Johnson added. The civilian population is beginning to recover, but it'll take time. We've lost so much, Captain. The cities, the infrastructure, and more. People are scared. We can't let that fear turn into division. Liz nodded, her mind racing. We can't afford to let that happen. We need to unite, not just to survive, but to thrive. We've shown the galaxy that humanity has the strength to fight back, and now we need to show our people that we can heal and rebuild. Her words were echoed by the crew, who understood the monumental task ahead. Their victory over the alien invaders had not just been a military one, it had been a battle for their future. The scars of war would fade, but the lessons learned would shape humanity for generations to come. As the Aegis began its journey back toward Earth, Liz's thoughts turned to the future. The alien invaders had underestimated humanity's resilience, and they would never forget the price they paid for it. But more than that, humanity had proven something to itself. It was capable of great things, capable of unity in the face of an overwhelming threat. The victory was hard-earned, but it had forged something stronger than just military power. It had forged the spirit of humanity. "I know it'll be a long road ahead," Liz said, looking at her crew. "But we've earned this moment. We've proven that we're not just survivors, we're builders. We can rebuild our world, and we can take the lessons we've learned from this war to create something better." A silence fell over the bridge as everyone absorbed her words. It was true. The war had torn apart much of the Earth, but it had also brought out the best in humanity. The courage, the determination, and the will to fight for survival. Those values would be the foundation of Earth's future. "We've got a long road ahead," Liz continued, her voice resolute. "But we'll walk it together." The Aegis made its way toward Earth, the battered but undefeated crew ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had defended their home, repelled an overwhelming invasion, and in doing so, had proved something greater. that no matter how insurmountable the odds, humanity could always rise to meet them. As the Earth came into view, the crew could see the damage, the scars left by the invasion, but also the promise of a new dawn. The battle was over, but this victory was just the beginning. Humanity had fought not only for survival, but for its future, a future they would build together, stronger than before. Liz took one last look at the stars, the weight of their victory settling in. Earth had proven itself, and the universe would never forget. This was the dawn of a new era, an era where humanity would stand proud, not just as survivors, but as a force to be reckoned with. And so, the Aegis returned home, carrying not just the weight of victory, but the hopes of an entire species ready to face whatever came next.